My daughter Savannah is the CEO of faking illness to get out of school. So when she does not feel like being there, she will go to the nurse's office and complain to them that she is really not feeling good so that they call me and I have to go get her. Well, one day after this happens, I walk into the administrative office and everybody is really concerned because Savannah is sitting in a chair like so dramatically like, hi, Mom. And like when I saw her, I burst out laughing. I was like, oh my God, are you okay? And everybody looked at me like I was some really bad mom. Like, oh my God, why aren't you more concerned? But as we were walking out, she was walking really slow and actually didn't look good. So even I was a little concerned. I was like, oh my God, honey, are you okay? Until we got to the car when Savannah looks at me and goes, you know what, Mom, I feel better now. And I was like, Savannah, are you serious? And she's like, Mom, do you maybe want to go to Starbucks and have like a girls' day? And I was like, honey, what kind of question is that? You know I do. So about 3 years ago, while my daughter Charlotte was sleeping, I started hearing some really weird noises coming from her room. So like a good mom, I went in there to investigate, make sure she was okay. Now, I started panicking because she was breathing really crazy. And mind you, she spent a good portion of the first year of her life in the hospital because she went into pending respiratory failure, literally was on life support for a few months and yada, yada, yada. Whole long, sad story for another time. Anyways, so I don't want to wait for the ambulance. I am panicking. I put her in my car. I drive to the emergency room as fast as I can. I'm basically blowing through red lights. I get there right to the front, go inside, and I'm like, oh my God, somebody please help me. Like my baby's barely breathing. She has a history of this. And they take her right away and assess her. And they let me know like, hey, calm down. Everything's fine. Like her oxygen levels are good. Like, please describe what you heard. And I was like, I don't know. Like she was making these crazy noises. She's having trouble breathing. And then the doctor tells me, y'all, she was just snoring. So when my husband and I were first dating, like a month into our relationship, it was his birthday. So I was like, oh, I'm going to do something nice for him. I'm going to surprise him by making him a birthday cake because I'm like trying to get this guy to fall in love with me, right? So I go to the store, get the ingredients, and I make 2 cake pans, pull them out of the oven, flip the first one over, and it crumbles into a million pieces. And I'm like, it's fine. I have the other one. Flip that one over and half of it crumbles into a million pieces. And I'm like, oh no, like what am I supposed to do? This guy's about to be at my house. I don't have time to redo it. So I'm like, I am going to fix it by myself. So I take my hands and I mash it all back together, except that it's not in the form of a cake anymore. It's now in the form of a hill. And I'm like, you know what? It's fine. Once I ice it, he won't even notice. I go to ice it, but the knife is picking up the cake pieces. So I'm like, oh, like what am I supposed to do? I get the bright idea to ice it with my fingers and it worked. But he shows up at my house and I'm like, happy birthday. And he's like, what is this? So when Savannah was in the 4th grade, I get this letter from her school that says I owe the cafeteria over $50. And I'm like, so confused reading this letter, right? Because I made this child's lunch for her every single day. And I'm so extra when I make it. I leave her notes. I get the good snacks. I get the good drinks. So when she comes home from school, I'm like, Savannah, why do I owe your cafeteria money? I just got a letter in the mail. And she was like, I don't know. Like, I get free lunch at school. And I was like, no, you don't. You don't get free lunch. And I make your lunch for you every day. So what are you talking about? And she was like, well, sometimes I throw yours away. And sometimes I eat an extra lunch there. And sometimes I just put them in my room. And I've been meaning to throw those away. And I was like, like, back up. What'd you just say? Show me right now. So we go into her room. And like hidden deep in this cabinet, like she's trying to be all slick, is like this graveyard of old lunch sandwiches that are, thank God, still sealed in Ziploc bags. And I'm like, gross! Like, what is this in here? Why would you do this? And she was like, so when my daughter Charlotte was born, it was a really tough time for me and my family because I had a very complicated pregnancy and she ended up being in the NICU for over 2 months. Well, during that time, all I ever did was shuffle back and forth between home and the hospital. So my husband one night was like, hey, let's go out. Like we have this Halloween party we could go to because Halloween is my favorite holiday, you know? And I was like, yes, let's do it. So we go out, we're in full costume, like we look bomb, we have a great time. And then directly after, I'm like, let's go to the hospital so we can see Charlotte. So we go to the hospital like in our full costumes, right? Just took the masks off, but we had them with us. We went upstairs to the NICU and Charlotte looked so beautiful in her little candy corn pajamas. And I looked at the nurse and I was like, would you mind taking a picture of us, please? And she was like, yeah, no problem. But then I looked at DJ and I was like, oh my God, let's put our masks back on. And he's like, no, like that's so weird. It's inappropriate. And I was like, no, it's not. Like, let's do it. And it produced the greatest family photo of all time. Ayo! So when my husband and I were dating, he asked me if I could take him to LAX one day. because he needed to catch a flight back home. And I was like, ugh, like if you live out here, you know it's the worst drive ever. But I was like, yeah, sure, no problem, you know. So we're driving to LAX, and I'm driving us to LAX, and we're talking the entire time, and I'm not really paying attention. And he goes, oh look, there's the 405. I'm this close to missing the exit, and I am all the way in the left lane. And he looks over his shoulder and he goes, you got it. So without even thinking, without even looking over my shoulder, I just turn the steering wheel, drive like from this to cross every single lane of traffic, which is like 6 lanes. I drive my car through the plastic dividers, which is now a wall because of people like me. And there's a hill, right, that I did not realize. So I drive through, up and over the hill, and my car's like, whoa! My husband is screaming the entire time. And at the end, I was just like, oh my God, my bad. I have no idea why I just did that. I almost killed us. So I asked Savannah to clean her room yesterday because I walked in there to vacuum and I realized that it was a disaster. So I'm like, oh my God, you need to clean your room right now. Like, you have so much stuff to do in here and you have till the end of the day. Okay, like, this is unacceptable. And she's like, okay, I'll get it done. And I'm like, great, we'll see. So she spends most of the day in there cleaning her room, right? And I go in at night to check on her. And when I walk into her room, what do I see? She is sitting in the middle of the floor with this little fake flame LED candle going like this. And I'm like, what are you doing? And she's like, I'm using this little candle so that I could see, so that I could clean my room. And I'm like, you know what would help you see? Maybe if you actually turn on a light in here. I don't know. So a few years ago, my husband and I planned this really fun, kid-free trip to Seattle for like 3 or 4 days. And while we were there, we made reservations of a really nice bomb dinner up in the Space Needle, and I was really looking forward to it. Well, before our reservations, we had hopped on a ferry to Bremerton and then hopped back on a ferry to head back to downtown Seattle to make our dinner reservations. Well, while we're on the ferry, I realized, like, I am getting hangry and I need to get a snack. I cannot wait. And then I realized they're selling cheesy bacon tater tots, and I get really excited because I love those, by the way. So I go to my husband and I was like, oh my God, they're selling cheesy bacon tater tots. I'm going to get some. Do you want some? And he was like, no, like, they're fairy tater tots, Laura. Do you even see a kitchen around here? Honestly, if you eat those, you're probably going to get sick. And I was like, you're ridiculous. I don't even care. And I ate them anyways. So we're sitting at our dinner reservations when I realized, like, I am not feeling good. And he's like, yeah, well, I told you not to eat those cheesy bacon tater tots. Like, you never listen to me. Who does that? Who eats fairy tater tots, Laura? So a few years ago, when my husband and I were in Vegas, we went to this place called Beecher's Madhouse in MGM, and it's not there anymore, but when it was there, it was like this cool variety show, and hands down, it was the funnest place I've ever been in my life. Like, they would have caricatures come and hang out and dance with you and stuff, but they also did this really weird thing where they would hook up little people onto the zip line, like, dressed like celebrities, and fly them across the club. Well, my husband and I were hanging out in the back by this stage that, like, you're really not supposed to be standing on or anything, but I was like, I don't even care. I'm living my best life right now, and I look cute. So I get up, and I start dancing, and I also had a little too much to drink. Well, I wasn't paying attention, and they hooked up little John onto the zip line and start flying him across the club, and he accidentally kicks me in the back of the head, and I flew off this stage. And I'm all like dazed and confused, like, oh my God, what just happened? And my husband is hysterically laughing next to me. And little John came up to me afterwards and was like, oh my God, I'm so sorry. And I was like, bro, like, it's fine. Like, I can't believe that just happened to me. I look like that one picture of James Charles. So when Savannah was 5 years old, my husband and I took her to Santa Monica Pier to ride her first big girl rides. Well, if you've ever been to Santa Monica Pier, you know they have that big swinging green dragon ride, just like the pirate ship ones, right? Well, she really wanted to go on it, and she met the height requirements to get on, but I was like, I don't know, like, I think you're going to be really scared, like, it's a terrifying ride. And she's like, oh, Mom, please. Well, I'm weak, and I was like, that's fine, like, okay, like, we'll go on, but we'll sit in the middle instead of on the end, so it's less scary for you. So we get on the ride, my husband's on one side, me and Savannah are on the other, and my husband has a camera to capture the moment. Well, the ride starts moving, and my sweet little angelic child goes from smiling to looking like something that is not even human. And looking back, I should have just said no. Mom fail. Here's my sweet little baby before. So when my husband and I were first dating, like 2 or 3 months into our relationship, he had to leave to go out to sea. Military. But shortly before he left, I had gone by his barracks room, and I realized, like, he didn't have any picture frames up of his family, his command, like, nothing. So I was like, hey, like, why don't you have anything up? Don't you want that? And he was like, typical guy, right? He was like, that'd be cool. So, but in my mind, I was like, I am going to make your dreams come true, and you're going to fall in love with me, dude. So I find this picture of his command, and I blow it up to, like, an 8x10, have it printed frame it, decorate it with ribbons, stickers. It looks beautiful, right? And I'm like, I'm so thoughtful, you know. So he comes by my house before he leaves, and I'm like, hey, I have something for you. And he's like, oh, do you? And I was like, yes, I do. Here you go. But in this moment, instead of him being so excited, he was like, where'd you get this picture from? And I was like, oh, like every girl's worst fear, right? Like, you're gonna figure out that I'm actually crazy, because we all are, right? And so I was like, well, I found it on your Facebook tag photos from a few years ago, so I printed it for you. So when I was pregnant with my son, the night before Easter, I went out into my backyard to start making my Easter extravaganza. I make holidays a really big deal in my house, but when I went back there, I realized our grass was super long because it hadn't been cut in like a month because we were in between landscape people at the time. So I went inside to my husband all emotional, and I was like, oh my god, babe, the kids aren't going to be able to do the Easter egg hunt tomorrow. The grass is too long. Please go take care of the backyard. And he was like, well, I don't know what you want me to do about it. Like, we don't have a lawnmower or anything. So I was like, well, I'll figure it out. So I go into the kitchen, and I grab scissors, and I come back to him, and I was like, here you go. And he was like, what do you think I'm gonna do with these? And I was like, please just go cut the grass. We have a very big backyard. So just to entertain me, and very sarcastically, he goes into the backyard and starts doing it. And I'm watching him, right? And all of a sudden he stops and looks at me and goes, Laura, the neighbors are gonna look over the fence and be like, look at this dumbass cutting his grass with scissors. And in that moment, I realized how crazy it is watching this full-grown adult, like, on all fours, cutting our grass with scissors, and it made me laugh so hard I fully peed my pants, right? So a couple of years ago, I'm picking up Savannah from school. It's back when she's in the 4th grade. And she gets into my car, and I'm like, hey, honey, how was your day? And she's like, it was great. I had a great day. And I'm like, oh, yay. I'm so happy to hear that. Hey, by the way, I know parent-teacher conferences are coming up. Is there anything you maybe want to tell me about before I get in there? You know, maybe give me a heads up? Anything I should know? And she goes, well, I thought I turned in my homework every single day for the whole semester. But it turns out, my teacher told me today that I haven't turned in a single piece of homework for the whole semester. And I'm like, after my husband and I were already dating for like 3 years and living together, I started to get a little impatient with him on the whole marriage thing. Because like when I first met him, I was all like, I love you, we're gonna get married and have kids one day. Like, I'm that crazy person. And also, I'm a Capricorn, right? So I already have no patience for anything in life. And one day we're arguing in our living room, and I decided like I was gonna bring it up again so I could win the argument, you know? So I'm all like super dramatic, and I'm like, are you ever even gonna propose to me? Are we gonna get married one day? Do you even love me? And he's all like, the most sarcastic person on the planet, right? He's like, oh my god, since you can't be patient for anything, hold on a second. And like goes to the bedroom, comes back out, and he's like, Jesus, will you marry me? And I'm like, oh my god, like you really just decided to propose to me right now while we're in the middle of arguing in our living room? Yes, I'll marry you. What? Let me see that ring. So when I was like 7 months pregnant with my son, I got a really intense craving for pickles one day, like most pregnant women do. So I went up into my cabinet and I grabbed a jar of speared pickles and I started eating them. But I never stopped. I ate the entire jar. And that also wasn't enough. I drank all the juice as well. And it was awesome until about 30 minutes later when it set in and my stomach started hurting really bad and cramping and I was in a lot of pain. So I got up and ran to the nearest bathroom, which happens to be next to my dining room, which is also where my husband was sitting down and eating at that time. And when I run past, I'm like, oh my god, ow! And he looks at me all concerned like, well, when I get to the bathroom, like, I don't even close the door. I sit down and I started having the most explosive diarrhea of my life. Like, it was literally liquid coming out. And I know that's TMI, I'm sorry. But my husband gets up and runs over. And I'm thinking he's going to check on me. But he doesn't. He runs over and he's like, oh my god, woman, close the door when you're going to the bathroom. And I'm hysterically laughing. And I'm like, I'm sorry. I ate a whole jar of pickles. And he's like, I don't care. Close the door. That's disgusting. I'm eating. So a little while back, I take Savannah to her annual eye exam. Everything goes great. She has 20/20 vision. She sees perfectly. Doesn't get her eyes dilated. When we go to leave, I am pushing her little brother and sister in these 2 umbrella strollers. So I'm already like, oh, like trying to figure out how to coordinate pushing the 2 of them. And I'm like, hey, honey, like, can you get the door for me? And the doors that we're walking out of are double doors. And she's like, yeah, I'll get the door for you. And I'm like, awesome, thank you. Oh, that'll be helpful. And so she goes over to the door and she starts pushing where the hinges are. And she looks back at me like, the door won't open. And I'm like, Savannah, honey, like, grab the handle, push the handle. And so she goes over to the other door and starts pushing on the hinges. And she looks back at me again like, it still won't open. And I'm like, Savannah, grab the door handle to open the door. So she walks back again and starts pushing on that other hinge one more time, and I'm just like, I'll get it. So for Halloween, I really like to do matching costumes for me and my family, and 2 years ago I decided that the theme we were going to do is Harry Potter. If you've been following me for a while, you know that I'm like a really big Harry Potter fan. Well, my kids were going to be wizards, I was going to be Bellatrix Lestrange, my husband was going to be Lord Voldemort, and my brother was going to be Hagrid. Well, for my husband's costume, like I had a hard time finding a good one, so I ended up taking a risk and getting one on Amazon from a third-party seller, which is so hit or miss, right? But his package comes in, and my husband, by the way, doesn't really like Halloween that much, but he gets all dressed up and stuff because I make him. Anyways, his package comes in, and he looks at it, and he's like, what is this? And I was like, it's Lord Voldemort, like, please just put it on. And he was like, Laura, I am not wearing this out in public. Have you seen what you ordered? And I'm like, yeah, it looks great. And then I looked at it, and it looks so stupid. So when my husband and I first started dating, he had to leave to go on his first deployment. And I was having a really rough time during that time because, you know, we were like newly dating and still getting to know each other. And then he had to leave military life, right? That's what you signed up for. But he decided he was going to go ahead and try to make it better. So he sent me an email and was like, hey, I got you some gifts. I'm going to send them to you in the mail. You should be expecting them sometime this week. And I was like so excited, right? Because I'm like, new relationship, like you're wooing me. So I'm like, is it going to be a purse? Is it going to be some shoes? Is it going to be some jewelry? We're going to find out. And then the packages come. I grab them. I'm so excited. And I open the first one. Never in my life did I expect to see an electric can opener. And I'm like, what a weird thing to send to somebody that you're dating. And then I open the second package and I see a thing of measuring cups. And I'm like, all right, I'm catching a theme here. Kitchen stuff. Like, what are you trying to tell me? Well, it turns out he thought I was a terrible cook, So like a year and a half ago, I was in Vermont hanging out with my 8 nieces and nephews, and I was trying to think of some games we could play that I loved as a kid that they had never played before, and I come up with the idea of Red Rover, which is the funnest game ever. So I set us all up. One team is on one side of a field, my team is on another side of a field, but I hate to lose. So I give my nieces and nephews on my team a pep talk like, you guys better not let them break through your arms. And they're like, oh, Aunt Laura, we won't. And I was like, all right, great. Well, I'm holding on to my 7-year-old niece's arm, and my 13-year-old nephew starts charging through as fast as he can, and he's very strong. And she hesitates like she's gonna let go of my arm. And I grabbed her harder like, honey, not today. Well, he broke through anyways, and then she fell onto the ground like, ah, my shoulder, and I'm like, oh my God, your mom is gonna kill me. I picked her up and carried her back to the house. She's a little thing. Well, we play another round without that one, and my 11-year-old niece gets hurt and starts screaming and crying the second time, and then I remembered why this was a band game at my elementary school. So a couple of years ago, I took Savannah and her best friend Marissa to the California Strawberry Festival here in Oxnard. Savannah and I love the Strawberry Festival, and we go every single year. And this year, we took Marissa with us. And while we're there, we're waiting in line for the spinning strawberry cups. And I look at Marissa, and I was like, hey, girl, you got something on your shirt. So that she'll look down, and I can go, ha, got your nose. Because I'm a grown, immature child, and I do that to literally everybody, strangers included, and it is never not funny for me. I don't even care. But I've known her since she was in first grade, and she's literally like another child of mine. So she looks at me, and she's like, nope, I know what you're going to do, Miss Playa, because that's what she calls me. And I did not accept that answer, so I reach out to get her nose anyways, and I have to, she's kind of far from me, so I have to like go like that, and I'm like, haha, got your nose. But I had my really long acrylics on, and I accidentally like clipped the inside of her nose, and this child started gushing blood everywhere. She told her mom, she's like, Miss Playa made me bleed. So when my husband and I were first dating, I used to have him come over to my house and cook for him all the time because I was trying to get this guy to fall in love with me by showing off my very bad cooking skills. Well, one dish I used to make for him all the time was my chicken Alfredo, and he gassed up my recipe, pretended to love it for months, but in reality, he lied. He hated my chicken Alfredo and said it was extremely hard to digest. But because I thought he loved it, I made it for him all the time. And I thought, if he loves it so much, other people will probably love it too. Like, wow, I am such a good cook. So when my job, my multi-million-dollar telecommunications company job that I worked at, had a potluck lunch, I brought my signature Alfredo, and no one ate it. And I was shook. I was like, wow, how rude. Like, they're lost. They're missing out. No, they didn't. They saved themselves because I used to make my Alfredo with canned sauce, an entire thing of Parmesan cheese, an entire tub of butter, and to spice things up, I would put cashews, broccoli, and raisins in it. So when Savannah was in the 5th grade, I had this parent-teacher conference that did not go well. Her teacher told me she was talking a lot in class, big surprise, and also wonder where she gets it from, right? But she was also failing one of her classes. So I went home and I was like, Savannah, like, what's going on? Why are you failing your class? And listen, I am a firm believer that not every single kid is going to be a straight A student. I don't like to put that pressure on my kids. C's get degrees, but you still can't fail your class. And she's like, Mom, I'm so sorry. Like, I will bring my grade up. I promise. And I was like, okay, like, I really hope you do, Savannah. Well, a couple days later, she comes home and she is so excited. And she's like, oh my God, Mom, guess what? And I'm like, what? What's going on? And she's like, I don't have an F in my class anymore. And I'm like, oh my God, good job. And we do this handshake. So we're like, woo, yeah, that's awesome. And she's like, yeah, now I have a D minus. And I'm like, Savannah, that is basically the same thing. And she's like, but it's not an F. So about 4 years ago, my husband and I decided we were going to take a weekend trip to Vegas, which is my favorite city in America, by the way. And while we're there, we're hanging out at the -5 degree lounge, which is a super cool bar that's entirely made of ice. And while we're there, my husband comes up to me and he's like, oh my God, Laura, those people that are over by the bar right now, they're members of Drew Hill. And I'm like, honey, who the hell is Drew Hill? And he's like, no, you did not just say that, because he's a huge fan. So we get up and we go introduce ourselves and we're hanging out. And that's when I realized, like, the guy I'm talking to is Cisco, like the thong song guy. So I'm like fangirling a little bit because I'm like, oh my God, I love him. And I'm sitting here talking to him and he's buying me and my husband shots. Well, I cannot do shots. I can't handle them. My husband's sitting there talking to them about how much he loves their music. And I guess in my mind, I decided it was a perfect time to embarrass the hell out of myself because I interrupted them. And I'm like, hey man, I just want to let you know the thong song was my favorite song in the 4th grade. And my husband's like, and Cisco's like, oh, well, okay. So a couple of years ago, me, my husband, and some of our friends went up to Buffalo Wild Wings to go watch the Super Bowl. And while we were there, we had a great time. We were eating wings and having drinks. And after it was over, me and my husband went home and went to bed. And around 1 o'clock in the morning, I woke up feeling so sick. I ran to the bathroom and started puking my brains out. And I'm sitting there like, oh my God, am I hungover or something already? Wrong. Once the uncontrollable diarrhea hit at the same exact time, I realized that I had food poisoning, which I had heard about from other people, but I had never actually experienced myself. And so I'm sitting there thinking I am dying, and also like, oh my God, why is there poop coming out and I can't stop it? Like, it was such a weird feeling. And I'm laying in the ground on a ball, freezing cold, like, oh my God, I'm gonna die. And then I noticed that my husband's favorite gray sweatpants are in my bathroom. And I put them on and they're so warm and comfortable. Like, I love them. And he comes in and he's like, Laura, no, please, you're going to poop in my pants. And I'm like, honey, I am not going to do that. Well, a little while later, I did. I pooped in them everywhere. So while my husband and I were still dating, we had planned this fun little weekend getaway that I was really excited about. But right before our trip, I realized, like, I was a little late. So I was like, am I pregnant? You know? So I made him stop by the grocery store on the way out so I can get a pregnancy test because we were going to be drinking and stuff on our trip. And I was like, I can't drink if I'm pregnant, you know? But just in case it was negative, I was like, we should grab alcohol and like condoms and stuff while we're here. Like, we're already here, right? So we're giggling about it on the way to check out. And it's like a really crowded store, like long lines. It's finally our turn to check out. And our cashier looks at our items and this woman has the audacity to call me out on it. She thinks it's so funny. So she starts like as loud as possible. It's like, oh my God, look at this pregnancy test, but just in case it's negative, y'all got alcohol and condoms, huh? Looks like you two are gonna have a fun weekend. And I'm standing in line like dying inside because I don't really get embarrassed, but like that was really embarrassing to me. And I was just like, you really call me out like that? So yesterday for Black Friday, I put on my patron pants and me and my husband trekked up to Verizon so I could finally get a new phone because I have been team iPhone 6 for the past year and everybody makes fun of me for how old my phone is and I cannot maintain any sort of battery life on that bad boy. Like, it was time. So I did it finally. I went there and I got the new iPhone 11 Pro Max and that phone is bomb. Well, while we're there, my husband's trying to convince me not to get the newest phone. And I'm like, but this is what I really want. And he's like, but honey, no offense, you break every single phone that you have. Like, it's just going to be a waste of money. And I'm like, well, listen, like, I really like this phone and how dare you? Like, I'm going to take care of it. I'm not going to break it. So him and the Verizon lady are laughing about it. And he's all, I need a phone case. I need a screen protector. And I'm like, calm down. Like, I am not going to break this phone. Like, I really love it. Well, about an hour after I got home, I dropped it and cracked the screen. So when my husband and I first started dating, I never did the whole like, oh my God, he's coming over, I need to look nice and do my makeup and get dressed thing. Wrong. You're at my house, so I'm going to be dressed how I do at home, which is like a complete and total bum. I don't care. One time he's hanging out and I needed to go to Walgreens to get photos, and I was like, hey babe, come with me to Walgreens. And he looked at me and was like, no, that's okay. I'll probably just hang out here till you get back. Like, trying to be nice. And I was like, what are you talking about? Like, don't be ridiculous. Come on, let's go. And I like make him get in the car and go to Walgreens with me. And when we get there, like, he refuses to get out of the car. And I'm like, what is your problem? Like, why are you being weird right now? Like, I have no idea what's going on. And he's like, Laura, I don't want to be mean, but like, you are dressed so embarrassingly right now. I don't even want to be in public with you. And I was like, what? And he's like, look at yourself. Sweatpants, shirt with holes and paint stains, no bra, boots with weird socks, hair's a mess, skin's a mess. I was like, oh, I made Savannah a Halloween basket today. It was full of all kinds of shit. It's the last day of her semester and she kicked ass. So I'm like, oh, I'm going to do something nice for her. So I put together this really cool basket for her. She gets home, she starts going through it. She's like, oh my God, I love it so much. And I'm like, oh, I'm so glad you like it. You know, I start putting away the dishes while she's going through it in the dining room. So she runs up to the sink and she's like, and I'm like, what's wrong? She's like, I thought that was candy. And I'm like, what did you think was candy? And she's like, the Juicy Couture. And I'm like, the perfume Juicy Couture that was in a box, in a bottle of perfume, that Juicy Couture? And she's like, yeah. And I'm like, did you spray that in your mouth? She's like, yeah, I opened it. And I was like, and I was like, gross. What? I swear to God, this is my child. She is just blessed. My daughter wanted a glass of milk. She comes up to me and she's like, Mom, can I get a glass of milk? She's 13 years old. And I go, sure, I don't care. Get a glass of milk if you want. And so she's like, okay, great. Gets a glass that is like this tall and fills it to the absolute top. There's this much room at the top. And I'm like, that's a lot of milk. She's like, oh, I just love milk so much. Chugs it. And I'm like, gross. And I'm like, you're gonna get sick. Like, that's a lot of milk. She's like, no, I won't. And then she's like, can I get another glass? And I'm like, I don't care. You're gonna get sick. I'm just telling you right now, like, that's too much milk. And then she chugs it again. And then she gets a bowl of cereal. And I'm like, here we go. She's eating the cereal and she's like, my stomach hurts. I think I'm gonna throw up. Runs to the bathroom and pukes her fucking brains out. And I'm like, I told you.